We're meeting this evening at Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018. We're in the first floor conference room in City Hall. It's about 6:27. We're a little late after finance meeting, but we'll get going. With that, if we just go around the quick for the viewing audience to know who's present.
Alderman Jake Catna.
Committee member Thad Kubishak.
Director of Public Works Joe Terry.
Paul Ballard, Public Works Superintendent.
Committee member Lee Graff.
Shea Blazer, Alderman.
Thank you. Item number 1 is to review the DPW report.
In the spirit of time this evening, your report's attached. If you have any questions, you can certainly address them. Otherwise, we'll get this posted also on the city's website.
Actually, item number 2, I received a phone call, and I just wanted to see where that, and I apologize for the 511 Maple. Is that currently by High Street, back behind High Street? Is that Maple back there?
No. The 511 Maple is kind of over by the post office.
Yeah, in back, yeah.
Just as a point of clarification, when we as a city decide to do sidewalks or not do sidewalks, and the resident wants it or not want it, can you explain a little bit of that process?
Sure.
I just received some phone calls on it, and I want to make sure that I understand it.
Yeah, so the city has a sidewalk maintenance program where a staff member goes and performs inspections in certain areas. And those areas are somewhat limited by the amount of responsibilities that they have, but we try to work our way through the city. When an area is selected, we try to review sidewalks in that area, and recently we've added a diamond grinding process as an option, where a sidewalk's just maybe up a half an inch, where it's just meeting that threshold of being a hazard. We can do that for a fraction of the cost of a full replacement. So the staff will review, make a determination whether it needs to be replaced or whether it can be ground. Notices are given to the property owners because according to our ordinances, that's an assessable expense. They're given the opportunity if they want to take care of it themselves or have the city do it, and then the city performs the work. This request for item number 2 is a little bit of a unique situation. The sidewalk is in tough shape, and the request was, gosh, you know, the sidewalk is needing extensive repairs, but there's no other sidewalk anywhere. Couldn't we just remove it? I'm not generally someone who supports decreasing the amount of sidewalk. I think that it's important that we have a robust pedestrian system. But in this particular case, the property owner's right. There is no other sidewalk in the area. We have no construction projects in the immediate future. It'd be, I think, in the best interest of everyone involved if it were removed and topsoil and seeded, and at which time the street is to be reconstructed. At that time, the sidewalk in that neighborhood would be evaluated, and if it needed to be installed at that point. So much of this is deteriorated that he'd be paying for it all now anyway. So
Who makes that decision whether we put sidewalk? And the only reason I ask is because, okay, on the west side of 21st Avenue where I live, there's no sidewalks all the way from basically West Grand all the way south to Gaynor.
yeah.
A couple of the apartments have them, but the question is, who makes that determination if we decide we're going to run that sidewalk?
So there's an ordinance that requires sidewalk in many situations. Some of the local low-volume streets, it's not required. But in most places, you know, if it's an arterial collector, it's required. In the past, through the assessment procedure that the city had, oftentimes under pressure from the residents that would show up and not want sidewalk, the committee would decide that we will forego sidewalk on this project. You know, and it's contradictory to the ordinance, but that's the council's prerogative on decisions like that. So there are standards in the ordinance for which sidewalks required. And when engineering performs projects, project design, it's designed in accordance with those ordinances. This location being a residential street, it's not required.
So if a resident, say, you know, the reason I ask over by High, I'm sure you guys have gotten phone calls, but there's a couple residents over there that currently don't have sidewalk, but we're putting sidewalk in. Is it appropriate? Is it high volume, low volume? And who's the board that makes that decision? They should be coming here?
Like 10th? What?
I believe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a location where that street's classified such that it should have had sidewalk, and it didn't. And over a period of several years, we had residents come in, our own staff and police department observations, especially the elderly in that area, would ride their electric scooters in the middle of the road in the wintertime, because that was the only place that didn't have, you know, when they plow the streets, there's still, that weighed partly in the decision, but it was a council decision to do that project in that area.
So for me moving forward, if I were to approve a street project, I would want to make sure that residents have the opportunity to call me, and then at that point I could actually not approve the street project contingent on the sidewalk.
Committee, sure. Committee.
And I'm just asking the proper procedure, because, you know, we approve street projects, I don't approve sidewalk projects, but I understand that it's all inclusive.
Yeah, so I mean.
So I would have to actually separate it out every time, so if residents called me and there was no sidewalk on the west side.
I would suggest that the best thing to do would be to take a look at the ordinance and review that. And if the ordinance needs to be adjusted, I think there's some room for improvement where, you know, there may be some situations where you may want to include some language for a process. You know, right now, there's not really a process. The ordinance is that it's supposed to be in.
Okay.
But I would suggest that'd be the way to look at it. You know, take a look at that ordinance and you know, we can review it and revise it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. As it pertains to this area, we don't see any reason not to comply with the property owner's request. But because our program is repair, this isn't. That's why we wanted to bring it to the committee for review and a decision.
Are we officially on, technically?
We'll get there, we'll officially get there.
Sorry.
And is there any other questions on that report first, I guess? No, okay, item 2, request from property owner at 511 Maple Street to remove sidewalk on Elm Street. Since it is in poor condition and is not connected to any other sidewalk. You've heard what has been said, and that's, you know, I appreciate having sidewalks in. I understand why people don't want sidewalks in. And in this case, is one that probably not to have, because it's not there in the neighborhood. And just so it's understood, if that's the route we go, understood that if there is if the streets are redone and whatever, and if, you know, that part of what our ordinance is, that sidewalk to be included, that that's what would be looked at it when that time would come. And so the property owner would be facing the same thing, I guess, when that would happen versus now.
Just for a point of clarification, are we removing this or the property owner is removing this?
City would remove it.
City would remove it?
Yeah, it's in the city right away. We would take care of that.
So, one concern I would have is that how many are these around town? If people start hearing that we did it once, are we gonna start going around and
Good
taking
question.
out sidewalks everywhere? And if we don't, then we're setting ourselves up to.
Yeah, I think the situation in this particular circumstance is that the condition of the sidewalk in general is poor. So not only is it poor, but so that a good amount of it would need to be replaced. Not only that, but there is no other sidewalk for it to connect to, you know, across the street, anywhere.
And we have poor condition stated in our sidewalk program, so let's say we went and evaluated a sidewalk in a similar situation where nothing was connected, but it was in good condition.
I think we would look at it differently, but again, that's why I wanted to bring it to the committee. I think, you know, can't make every decision based solely on kind of cookbook, right? I mean, that's why we have boards and committees, and this particular situation is different.
Right.
And if in another situation, I think it'd be important for us to note in the minutes why we want to do this, so that if there is a question as to why did they do this last time, we can look it up.
Right.
Absolutely.
So how did, I guess, I don't understand was it a case where this wasn't deemed, and then they got a letter in the mail saying that, okay, so it wasn't that the property owner themselves, because much like Mr. Kavanaugh's suggestion, I've got about 7 feet of sidewalk that doesn't go anywhere in front of my house, and it's kind of dipped down, and I just kind of mow over and whatever else, and it connects the sidewalk to my next door neighbor's house that dead ends either at their property line, but even closer, where I would like that taken out of there. And if the city's gonna be doing that, I would love to do that, because then it won't cost me anything, and I would put my own black dirt in there just as a deal with it. But if it was a case where this was deemed that this is gonna get repaired, and then their reaction was, hey, listen, can we look at an alternative method, then I feel better on that
Sure.
aspect, that it isn't just someone petitioning and saying, hey, you know, please remove this because it looks unsightly in my yard. It was actually deemed that it was
It
gonna
deemed
get replaced.
deemed that it needed replacement. Part of our inspection process, they received a letter, and we're concerned about it. Again, I think continuity of our sidewalks is really important, and having long-range plans and trying to be as consistent as we can. You know, with our ordinances, it's there for design purpose. Always try to avoid kind of design by committee, but it's hard when you're sitting in a room and there's 20 people putting pressure on to say, well, no, we're going to stick with our plan. But no, to answer your question, this was not just the property owner making the request. This was in response to an assessment letter that they received.
Any other questions, comments by anybody present? Lee?
And I apologize for the picture, but if you actually, is that south facing?
It's kind of skew. You
Yeah.
got Solaris right there.
Yeah.
Garfield runs north and south.
Yeah.
Elm Street runs north and south.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'd be the west, so the,
Birch is right behind the,
okay, so,
Solaris and the post
Yeah,
office.
yeah.
and
so
Birch.
from the corner actually to the property, that would actually be north then? Or is that south?
This would be north. running
Right, so the
north.
property to the north, if they had sidewalk, it would connect for the parking lots, is that obviously for the safety? I mean, right, that's the only spot that's really missing? Because if you look directly across to the parking lot, it almost looks like there's a sidewalk there for people to access that parking lot. So
Yeah, it
there's a
does look like
sidewalk
there's-
across, so there's a sidewalk across the road, but if that extended north to the other corner, then you would actually,
That parking lot, I believe, is actually the church parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at.
which one you look, or the, make sure we're in the right parking lot.
yeah.
This is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
church
that's
here.
the church.
That's Solaris there,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's the church.
Okay, so but, you know, this sidewalk just to the north actually connects, and then this is sidewalk to that parking lot, right?
Yeah, so that's some kind of an outwalk there.
So that would be, Birch Street would be considered an arterial street, that's why they would have sidewalk on Birch Street.
Oh.
You know, just to be consistent with what Joe had said, and
Yep.
even at that, the sidewalk that's on the north side of Birch Street, on the Solaris side, because of the narrowness of that street,
Mm-hmm.
we don't force Solaris to have that plowed in the winter time. we actually remove the snow off of the south side and take all the snow that way.
Yeah, looking at Garfield, you got the two churches right there, that's where their entrances are, walking down. You've got the library kitty corner that isn't on a screen there, so I can kind of see the need for sidewalks on Garfield. Elm Street kind of just dead ends. One, it dead ends on Maple. You got what Mr. Graff pointed out of this kind of sidewalk into the parking lot, but if you go north, the street doesn't go all the way through to West Grand.
Right.
Actually, that'd be East Grand at that point.
Yeah.
So it's almost kind of and I know exactly where this is. I've driven by Elm at this location. I don't think I've actually ever driven on that street.
Right.
You know, to actually go anywhere. So the question would be for society or for residents in town, you know, is it gonna be a burden placed on individuals in town if we don't have sidewalk there? Not really, because there's no real access. You can walk all the way down to Garfield and cut across, you know, there's other avenues. But the one thing that I want to throw out to the committee is that if we were putting in sidewalk, there's a cost to it. There's a cost to the property owner. They're suggesting that they don't want to pay a cost to a point. On the other hand, there needs to be a little bit of skin in the game regardless, because if we do, and I don't think we'd be creating a precedent, but again, if other people, you know, request something like this, it still costs the rest of the taxpayers money, you know, to have the city crew do that. Now, it'll be a lot more inexpensive than actually putting new concrete and everything in.
So you're suggesting perhaps assess for the removal costs?
Assess for the removal costs and at cost. You know, I mean, if we assess for it or make an estimate that it's going to cost this, and then it comes in less, it only takes 3 man-hours, and we charge them a 5-yard dump truck or whatever, then that's what it is. You know, but I mean, there almost has to be, because otherwise, if other people come in, and that would be fine if we have another situation similar to this with a decaying sidewalk. But the element is that there is a service being provided to their property, and we can't do that to everybody. Grandma Jones, like I always talk about, shouldn't be paying her taxes toward that, because this is more of a user fee, specific type of a thing like that. And I think that that's reasonable. I think that that's, personally to me, it's a reasonable situation.
Well, they'd have to be informed as well that in the future, any installation of sidewalk would be, again, they're assessed at the full rate.
So with the sidewalk program, I know I just had it done recently. I believe when I was sent the notification, there was an option I could do it myself
That's
as well
correct.
at no
Correct.
cost. So that could be an option for
If
these
they wanna
people
remove it
looking at
themselves.
removal as well. Yeah, if they want to remove it themselves.
Yeah.
But if they don't, if they want the city to come take it out, well then there's it costs fee.
Okay, committee, I'd entertain a motion, I guess, on to formally do this.
Well, I mean, Thad, if you wanna,
Well, I guess looking at the kind of the scope of it in terms of having a motion, this is something that, because we sent the letter out to them, we're the ones that initiated this. So time is not necessarily of the essence. It could be a case where the sidewalk could have sat there for another 5 years before we'd sent out a letter, type of a thing. So the question is, if we make a motion, or if I make a motion or whatever, to suggest that we would do it at the cost, or the property owner would have the option to remove it themselves at whatever their own
Yeah, and we
cost
would set a
is.
deadline for that, and if that deadline isn't met, then the city would perform the work the same as if
Correct.
we were making repairs.
Correct. So I don't have a problem making a motion to approve a request to remove sidewalk at cost, or whatever, at an at-cost assessment against the property if the city does it, or have an option for the property owner to remove it themselves, much like they have an option to repair the sidewalk or replace the sidewalk at their own cost, and with a deadline of whatever is consistent with any of the deadlines that we have for sidewalk repair or replacement. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just having the deadline there, so it'd be just
Consistent.
Yeah.
Is there
If
typically a
there
deadline?
is.
Yes, yes, we set a date, and if we, you know, first of all, date for when we hear from the property owner, we need to know by this date. If we don't hear from you, we're assuming that we're gonna take care of it, and then we would also set a completion date.
And then maybe can we, maybe amending the motion to extend that date by 15 days? Because they brought this forth and we're making a decision on it. Is
Yeah, I
that-
think we would look at a reasonable time this fall, you know, because we have already
Yeah.
Correct.
begun our sidewalk repair process, and kind of we're holding this one out to see how it panned out, so.
Sure.
Is there a standard date, time, 30 days, 60 days, 45 days?
There is, but without looking at the letter, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
And do we need to have, just for clarification, do we need to have the date specified prior to the motion, or can we use a consistent?
I would feel comfortable with the language being consistent to what we have with that.
Okay, and if, as long as that's fair, then I would say.
Motion and second to go along with the request. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, ayes have it.
And maybe if, Mr. Terry, if that's something that we need to look at, adding language to the ordinance itself to include something like this, so as we move forward, this isn't just a one-off, we can actually address it. This will probably be the last one in the next 5-10 years anyway, but
Unless you bring yours.
it was, what's that?
Unless you bring yours.
Unless I bring mine, yeah, I might take care of mine anyway, so. We'll see what Google View has. Anyway. Go ahead,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
all right, that's all right. Number 3, request from Alderperson Blazer to add an exemption to the overnight parking ordinance, which would exempt homeowners from the alternate side parking ordinance that live on streets that don't allow parking on the alternate side of the street.
So in your packet, there's a copy of the email that I sent to the police department and staff, as well as the responses. And so this was tried back in 2008. And the recommendation from the police department, and this was a question that came up maybe a year or two ago for some alternate site parking discussion. I think is it related maybe to snow removal, or maybe doing alternate side parking for certain months of the year only. And the responses received at that time were also that in 2008 it was attempted and monitored and evaluated, and a report back. And the police department struggled. There were numerous complaints because people would park maybe a vehicle that wasn't necessarily operable on a street, and maybe not necessarily in front of their house, might be in front of a neighbor's house. They just had a number of complaints related to parking that began when that trial started. I don't have the details for that trial. I wasn't working here at the time and didn't look it up. I just included the responses from the police department. So their recommendation and the recommendation from the city engineer, after giving it some thought, is that it's likely that the unintended consequences would outweigh the benefits of having a system where if you did not have parking on one side of the road, you wouldn't have to worry about alternate side parking. I mean, I think the concept is reasonable, but their concern is that the execution of it is likely to have some issues.
Shane?
Well, I was here in 2008, and I don't recall a large amount of complaints.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think Bob Nash, even on the council, said that, we should just get rid of it at that time, but it didn't happen. I do agree that there's always that potential that you can have a junker vehicle laid out on the road, and right now because of the alternate side, they have the option to tow it, but I don't know how many streets only have restriction on one side of the parking, or one side of the street. There can't be that large number of them, where you can only park on one side.
What, do you have any examples?
Well, actually, this came about because Lee Ulrich, I was talking to him one day and he asked about it because he lives down by Assumption, down by the circle down there.
Yeah, means
Yeah, he can park on one side, but the other side has no parking. Hence, that's where this came from, which makes sense. I don't know how many streets have no parking on both sides where you can't alternate side. I'm sure there's maybe a few, I don't know. So that's what brought this about, that obviously they're being assessed for their road, so they have money into it too. And if they don't have that option to park alternate side, then I can't see what the issue of them parking on one side. I know our law enforcement is smart enough to figure out, well, they can't park on that side of the road, so obviously we shouldn't ticket them on this other side. I just don't know the street miles that are affected by this, but it can't be that many in the community. And obviously this might be a good trial then if we're gonna have junk vehicle issues. I have no skin in the game either way, but.
Are there other remedies? Is there options that if someone needed to park on the alternate or the wrong side that they can call in and get a pass?
No. And I don't think it's no longer feasible because we don't have a dispatch center, where before when we used to have no parking, they call in and then you'd be written on a log at the police department, and then the officers during the night would check that log and when they went out and did parking enforcement. But there's not that option anymore because we don't have that. And I think it's just even would be a nightmare to keep track of or have somebody around City Hall do that. I don't think that's a good use of time either to track overnight parking.
I didn't even think of that being one area. Yeah.
So I've also taken a complaint on this with my time on council, so in the past few months. A lot of residents just, they don't yet understand the junk vehicle concept. I did explain that to the lady and she understood then and basically rescinded her complaint. But I do think the alternating sides of the streets just to prevent junk vehicles, I think it goes a little too far and inconveniences more people than it does with just a few junk vehicles around town. I know, just speaking from example, I had some friends, we all met at my house, they all parked on my side of the street, not thinking it's middle of summer, nothing wrong with it, and then all 3 cars got ticketed right in a row, really just to enforce an ordinance if it's for junk vehicles that they clearly weren't junk vehicles. But so yeah, I mean, I could see just completely getting rid of it, otherwise rewriting it to where if a vehicle is somehow on the side of the road for an extended period of time where no one's noticed it, you can call in and then maybe we could keep an eye on it, because I'm sure it's only a few instances throughout town.
It's not too
So,
rampant.
yeah, I think we're inconveniencing a lot more people than we are just for junk vehicles.
Plus there is a abandoned disabled vehicle ordinance too, and I'm not sure exactly what that states.
So I guess I'm not technically in favor of parking on the streets in general, and the reason for that is because of plowing snow. You know, that's our only operation that we do at night anymore. Before they used to, it's my understanding that before the ordinance was written that way, because the street sweepers worked at night, and so cars are parked in the way. They can't sweep that area, they can't sweep it for all the time that the car's parked there. So the alternate side of the street piece of things for plowing snow at least allows us to get that one side of the street, you know, hoping that a storm falls on a even day one time and then the next time it falls on the even side. And if we allow just straight up parking on the streets, there's multiple times during the day, you know, because we start at most of the time midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning and finish about anywhere from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, that, you know, the grader or the loader makes a pass down the one side of the street, somebody's parked on the street through the snow event, now all of a sudden the resident comes home, he can't get into his driveway because he's got a windrow. He parks on opposite of the other car. The grader or the loader, whatever, can't make it through because he's, 20 feet wide and we're taking up 12 feet of the roadway because of the car. So that's the nicety about having alternate side, is because there are people that are habitual offenders of it, that, if there's been a windrow there for the whole time, 3-4 snowfalls and that car hasn't been moved,
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden the car moves and we got a safety issue with that windrow on, out in the road.
And I understand the plowing thing, I totally understand. When I lived in La Crosse, I think it was, we had to move our sides of the cars from November 1st to April 1st, so I do understand that. I just think in the summer, my neighbor, for example, they got a few daughters that are in between high school and college.
Sure.
And like the typical city lot, they got 2 spots to park in the driveway. So I don't think it's an issue for them, but I'm sure they would prefer if they could just always come home and park in front of their house versus having to figure out which day it is. And I know I've lived in places around town that several people have had to do that. So yeah, I just really don't know if, I understand the winter month thing, but I think it could be reevaluated for the summer and warm months, that we could say, do we really need to have this ordinance in place just for junk vehicles? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're inconveniencing or addressing something that the whole city has to be affected by, maybe a few junk vehicles
Right,
potentially.
exactly.
Let's address the junk vehicles versus everyone else have to deal with the parking ordinance.
Lee?
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chair. But also this ordinance plays in favor, right? I mean, we get a lot of stormwater runoff, and street sweeping is very important with what we're actually sending. That's obviously why we sweep the streets.
But we don't sweep at night anymore.
Yeah, it's part of the requirements of the DNR,
But we don't sweep at night
but
anymore.
we don't sweep at night anymore. We're sweeping during the day.
I mean, just thinking of where, my area is inundated with apartments, do you run into issues with street sweeping even during the day where vehicles are parked on the appropriate side of the road from the night and they stay there all day? I mean, do we have that many issues?
I'm sure there is situations like that, today, for example, he was north of West Grand Avenue and there was 3 cars parked in the street, and he went through and he was 2 blocks away and the cars moved, and, so, yeah, I mean, it's an issue, but,
But I think it's not as much of an issue as it could be, because if in the summer months you didn't have any alternate site parking requirements, the car that doesn't get used very often could sit there all summer. It could be a situation where, we're never able to sweep that street, or, and now I don't think it's as much of an issue because it's gotta move.
How often do you sweep each street though?
once a month.
Every street gets swept once a month.
That's the intent of the plan, minus sicknesses or illnesses or whatever.
We went round and round with this,
No, it's been always.
I couldn't say how long or how many times or whatnot. I mean, it come down to that, I think the time frame is what, 3 to 6? We're still at 3 to 6 a.m. Get somebody
Yeah,
can
it's
park.
from 3 to 6, I believe. Yeah, it's 3 to 6, I believe.
That basically can park except for 3 hours. You can park on either side except for 3 o'clock in the morning till 6 a.m. I think that's the hours we still have, it's 3 hours.
Right, let's say
Then it goes to
you're
alternate
meeting
side,
somewhere,
so
you're
3 to 6.
parking at someone's house, and then, if you're not.
And people didn't, I think probably all that's been talked about tonight was talked about way back over all the times, from junk cars to that, even, it could be a good car, but why should I park in front of my house? I'll park on the other side of the street. Leave my lane open. So the neighbor has to look around to get back in and out of the driveway or whatever. So I mean, there were many of us that didn't think that it should be restricted. It was talked about I believe Port Edwards has it, Joe, yet, don't they, that the wintertime they can't park from what, November to
Right.
April or whatever. Other communities have that too. This is what was decided upon, and I think, as I remember right, when it first went into effect, is people were confused on which day they weren't supposed to park. Because, what is today's
Yeah,
date?
the date's extra bit late.
Today's the second.
The second, so
So it'd be
technically,
the-
the third is the day.
Right.
People were confused, not everybody, but people were confused of what day was to be the day, so. It's been talked about, Shane, the location you bring up is that in something like that, they can't park on the other side, I mean, ever. In the case, I mean, where we're talking about, it can be parked, or what we have now. I mean, the ordinance is park here, park there. In a case like Shane mentions, they can park in front of their house, but on the other side is that circle that you can't park there anytime. And that's why I didn't know where the instance was, Shane.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there
And
was.
how many of those there are, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, that part of town has a number of streets that are narrower where you can't park.
Sandlot Park, there isn't parking on the park side,
That's right.
or, sorry, opposite the park. No, on the park
That's
side.
good now, that.
Is it Hill Street, I think?
So if anybody living on Goodnow there would, alternate side park. Technically.
I believe, just going by.
Well, I remember, I wasn't involved, this goes back years, but I remember the history, at least I'm trying to remember the history, when alternate side parking actually came about, because as it has been brought up, there was no alternate side parking, there was no parking on the street, period, in town.
Correct.
It was from either 2 to 6 or 3 to 6,
Yeah,
or
That was
whatever.
in the last 10 years.
Period.
Because I was here when it was brought up.
Yeah.
And the compromise, because and I don't know who it was, and I probably, someone could probably research this or whatever, but it was a case where, the alternate side parking was a compromise to the original proposal of letting cars park in the street versus what the status quo was of not parking in the street at all. And and again, I could be wrong, I'm not 100% certain, but I think that there was other reasons, aesthetic reasons, why parking was not allowed in the city. It was because there was a lot of single-family homeowners that owned property in town, and it was one of those where it just feels more of a community if you don't have cars parked up and down. It isn't Green Bay or Madison or College Town or whatever. It's a proper town, and that's what everybody wanted at the time. And then as we've been changing as a community from basically a community that were primary domicile homeowners to a renting community, or a larger percentage of renting community, there are more people who own cars that live in a particular house. So therefore, there is where that need comes into play in parking in the street, because if everybody had a 6-stall driveway, I would assume that everybody's gonna park in there. But the reason why people are parking in the road is because there is a need for that. So then, again, the alternate side parking was a compromise to allow people to park in the street who needed to park in the street because they didn't have enough driveway space. But it was a compromise because there was the sentiment that said, we don't want parking in the street at all, period, from 3 o'clock till 6. You can still go to the tavern, you can still be parked out in front of establishments until 2:30, 3 o'clock, but from that window, we don't want kind of, whether it's junk vehicles, any vehicles or whatever, those vehicles are gonna move because it's kind of a rotation process, otherwise they get ticketed or towed. So looking at the original history of what that was and where we wanna go, I think that in my opinion, that's why I'm, I guess, bringing it up, I think that it could be relevant in terms of making a decision. moving forward with this. But Mr. Blazer, if you mentioned that you really don't have any skin in the game per se, with the compelling testimony that the police officers have offered, as well as Mr. Ballard has brought up about snow plowing, you know, I think we're sitting here kind of weighing the scale of justice in terms of how many people would benefit from being able to park on the same side of the street if there isn't alternate side parking on the opposite street, or on the opposite side of the street, versus the future people that are gonna be hindered by snow removal processes. And because if you guys gotta move around a car, it's not just gonna affect that person that owns that car, it's gonna affect the neighbor in front, it's gonna affect the neighbor in back. And I know that that's one thing that I don't wanna do when we get a 1.5 foot of snow, is snow blow up everybody else in the street. You know, I wanna take my own driveway and that's it, and go in the house where it's warm. So I think that there might be some unknown unknowns that if we allow this, or if it isn't a specific pilot program, maybe we could try a pilot program like 2008. It is 10 years later, we've got a different dynamic of people in town. But again, there are going to be some injured parties that if we do this, potentially, you know, and so that's what we gotta weigh. Is it gonna benefit the people that are being potentially injured by having this alternate site ordinance? Or if we remove it, how many people are gonna be injured from that moving forward? I don't know. I don't.
Just to clarify, typically we get more than 6 inches of snow, we declare a snow emergency. So that wouldn't be the issue, more than 6 inches. It's just the regular, I mean, the majority of our snowfalls that we get is when we don't declare a snow emergency, but we get a larger snow event, then that's when there's no parking on the streets. So, just so I didn't confuse you guys with what I had said.
And even in a snow emergency, you stop vehicles on the street.
Yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of people that are mad because they're all hooked, you know, but.
But yeah, it's still, even a snow emergency doesn't solve the job. I guess I didn't think this was gonna be a big debate. And I guess I understood, you know, the concern obviously is, you know, how do you park in that situation? Well, then you can't park on the alternate side, so then you have to move it other streets. So it just made sense to me at the time when I had heard the issues that, well, if you have no parking on the opposite side of the street, I know our police department can figure out that, hey, they have no parking on the opposite side of the street, there's no point in giving them a ticket if they're parked on the wrong side. But I guess, you know, people can move their cars to different streets then to solve that issue if they don't have that option to park on the opposite side.
Mr. Chair, would it be an option, and I'm just asking the question, is this a summer issue or a winter issue, or all year?
Day and stay.
And the reason I ask is because if it's a summer issue, then maybe there could be something that we can do during the summer to alleviate that. But if it's a winter issue, then we obviously, as a municipality, we're paying more in services with those vehicles that sit on the same side of the road, and we would never be able to clear off that, so we would have to come back and reiterate that. It's hard to vet out if we don't know the amount of roads or streets that have only, because we just approved, and I was, pulled up the GIS, we just approved no parking by Lincoln High School down that whole corridor. So I guess my question is, you know, do we, or we could get a list of streets that are no parking, that are only on one side? So we could really take a look at the issue to say, is this, you know, as a municipality, we can't really adhere to this, or we have to adhere to this during the snow removal, you know, time of the year, but then during the summer, we would be able to waive, you know, create the ordinance where this issue, because it's more of an issue during the winter than what it would be during the summer. So is there an opportunity for us to do that, or would it be appropriate?
I think that would be a good start. The resident I took a complaint from a few months ago that her whole understanding why she thought we had to rotate sides of the street, and I think other people think this as well, is because of all the snow removal factors we're talking about. And when I explained to her the junk car thing, she understood it. She still didn't really like it, but I think most people get the snow removal part of it, and I think that's why other municipalities do the November 1st through April 30th or April 1st. But in the summertime, a lot of people are like, really? I mean, why do I have to do this? And so.
And again, there's not an officer here, just, in reviewing the responses. I think it would be challenging, just intuitively, right? If, not even necessarily a junk car, but the car's parked out there all summer. Do you know if it's abandoned? It's got a license plate on it, hasn't moved, that it becomes more challenging to enforce the ordinance if you're gonna go out at 3 a.m. every once in a while and check. Versus, I'm not sure that I'd appreciate if the neighbor parked their car across the street in front of my house and it stayed there all summer. A nice car or not. Which wouldn't happen if it's just on streets that you can park on one side. But even then, I want to keep my front yard looking nice, so I'll park in front of the neighbor's house, so I still have a nice view of the street or whatever, And I think there's some other potential issues that we don't see because we don't allow parking all the time.
Well, I think one of the main things is, how much does it, in just a strict purview of cost, how much does it cost us, not necessarily to enforce, but how much does it cost us if someone parks on the right side of the road that they're supposed to be parking on, compared to how much is it potentially gonna cost us if we now remove this regulation, and now we gotta come back for snow. There was a case where that I had to deal with about chip seal. The road was chip sealed and there was a car parked there, and the chips didn't get swept up until the next spring, and they were up in the yard and everything like that, just because one car was so. Now, I actually went, I don't know how much more it cost the city, because I went on my own, I took my broom and I brushed everything and I took it, but theoretically, how many other alderperson are actually gonna do that? So it's one of those where it isn't costing us anything to keep, it isn't costing taxpayer money anything more than the status quo with enforcement and everything. But if we remove that regulation, one, it removes the teeth to be able to take a junk car away, but it also potentially could cost more by changing this ordinance. So like I said, just a strict purview of cost.
All right, guys, I gotta head out.
Okay.
Very
Good
good.
enough. Okay.
See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are spending an inordinate amount of time on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Other than people don't like it probably, that didn't like it, 8 years ago. I think it's worked as far as I know, other than maybe the instance
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
brought up in that circle
I don't think
there,
there's a big issue
that
with
they can park on one, there's no place to park on the other side. I was trying to think where maybe vacant land to park in front of, but in that circle there, you can't. I guess for the present, I guess I would be just in favor of leaving as we are.
We can always revisit it.
Right, I'll make a motion to that effect that we, I guess it'd be deny the request.
So just as a point of order, I know the city attorney would rather that I just note in the minutes, no action taken, rather than do a negative motion. So if that's okay, I could just put in the minutes that no action was taken.
I think that that would be fine, and I'll even add a little bit, Mr. Chairperson, is that if there are individuals that are passionate about this, let us know.
Yeah.
Give me a call. I don't know if people watch this or not. If it is something that really affects you, let us know, because that makes a big difference. But right now, yeah,
Okay.
either no action is taken, because that, in a sense, kind of kills it per se, but it isn't that we want to kill it, we just, we're not taking any action right now because we don't think that it's pertinent to take it right now, so.
And if that's okay with it, Lee, one more?
I wanted to add, you know, if this comes back up and we do get enough residents that call aldermen, then the one thing when we get this put on the agenda is we gotta have all of the streets that are. no
Yeah, we
parking.
just have to go through the ordinance book.
Yeah, we'd have to go through it so we fully can understand it, to really identify the needs or not needs and that kind of thing.
A lot of pages of parking in the ordinance book, but that's how you do it.
Yeah.
That's a big section. Okay, it's okay with the committee and that, we'll just, no action taken. Item 4, we discuss policy and ordinance development, modifications for automated refuse and recycling services.
So last month, just about everything got resolved. There are 3 pretty big items left. One item that remains is the townhouses. We've heard from property owners that feel that there needs to be an exception for owned townhouses. There are certain other areas in town where we simply couldn't do it. The staff recommendation remains that townhouses, in a unique situation there, that they're generally not in an area where they can just roll the cart out in front of their house and it's adjacent to the road. But we do need to come to consensus on that in order for me to get the language proposed. So if you've given some more thought, if there's some consensus, where are we at with that? And hopefully we can come to some conclusion tonight so I can get the language drafted.
For whatever reason, I kind of thought that we had some type of, whether we actually officially kind of voted on it or not, but some consensus with the particular ones that Mr. Graff had brought up, the 0 lot line ones. And whether they're considered townhouses as far as assessor's office go, I don't care, because that's a completely different description. But as far as a legal term of being 0 lot line, as far as I know, there isn't any other 0 lot line that are similar to this with multifamily. And as far as I'm concerned, as a committee member, creating whether it's a 6-month or a 1-year type of a deal with them, trying to accommodate the services. And I didn't bring it with me, but I actually created a spreadsheet, and out of the 18 residents there, at least 15, that is their actual domicile. And in fact, they're actually paying more property tax than I am on my house. So as the tax rate goes, I think that almost half of them are paying more property taxes, and in my opinion, they should get the services that any other person with a domicile would have. Now, if half of them are rented out and different things, that'd be a different story. I think that they, as an association, as a condo association or whatever their association is, I think that they can understand as well that if we have some type of a pilot program with them that we want to try and accommodate them, if it isn't working, we need to come back to the table and they need to make concessions themselves. As far as townhouses that are rentals, that are income property, no, they would fall under the element of townhouses, but 0 lot line condos,
So the challenge with that is, like, for example, in Colonial Charm, there's 2 or 3 of those that are rented. They're owned by somebody and rented. And for those 2 or 3, are we going to require them to have a dumpster for those 2 or 3? Or they're collected privately and we'll still collect the rest? And I think logistically it becomes problematic.
Yeah, on the other hand, I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater type of thing. I don't wanna punish the other 15 people because 2 or 3 potentially are rentals on that. I can't, there's no way, I'm not gonna punish the rest of them who are, if that is their actual legitimate domicile, which I did an unscientific study in terms of my reach with finding that, but yeah, I mean, that's, for 15 of them, that's what it is, and I'm not gonna vote to make them pay any more than what I would be paying, so. Like I said, they're paying more property tax than I am, so they could make that argument.
So with those, if we're gonna let them do that, how do we identify if there's a violation? How are we gonna identify who's violating?
You have to pick them all up.
I mean, we
You
won't know
can't-
wose violating.
Right, you won't know. You
Those
have to do
those
it's
three
all-
that
it's
are
all
rentals or
nothing.
whatever we have.
No, I'm talking about anybody that violates. If any one of those, because you're not picking it up in front of their home.
It's all
They're gonna
nothing.
have to, because the homes aren't adjacent to
Yeah.
the street, they're gonna have to cart it out to the street somewhere. And we won't know.
Well, they got RFID chips in them, don't they? And their serial numbers, right?
But are we gonna do it on a one-to-one basis?
We could.
Yeah, you have to pick them all up or not. I don't think, cause you can't, like you said, you can't pick and choose. Like,
Yeah, and if somebody
well, this
has
one
more
was
stuff
rental,
out,
this
then
one
we're gonna
wasn't.
have to, it's not like if it's in front of your house,
Right.
okay, the operator can identify, this is the problem, right? It's in front of your house. One of these, they'd have to get out, read the serial number. Someone else is gonna have to figure out, well, which one of these was the proper serial number for the proper, but I don't think it's insurmountable that we can't try it. I just don't think that those types of properties are appropriate for this type of collection, that it would be far more efficient for them overall. Far more efficient overall, I won't say for them. But any homeowner organization like that, it'd be far more efficient to have a dumpster facility for the community, when it's
So-
collected once a week.
Here's my take or thought on this. Is there an opportunity where you break out the ordinance into 2 townhouses, where it is the primary domicile, then we create a specific set of rules, kind of like we did with Quadplex. We're willing to give 2 carts, but they could purchase an additional couple carts for a Quadplex,
Mhm.
which is an income property, but we're willing to, as taxpaying residents. So what I'm saying is the townhouses that are strictly for profit, they need to come up with their own garbage and recycling. And then another side note that is on townhouses that are
Would it be based
privately-
on like more than
private-
50% are
That's-
rented
that-
or?
You know what I'm saying, more than 50%, or in a situation where a townhouse becomes less than 50% owned by individual landowners, they have to bid out, the other ones would. And then at that point, we wouldn't give all 18 people a cart because we didn't do it for a Quadplex.
Yeah, and you wouldn't take them away though, because, I mean, if all of a sudden it's 50% and it goes over the threshold, that'd be really hard to go and say, I mean, looking at the
That's why I asked the
situation that
question.
we have now, people are saying we're taking it away when we should have never delivered them in the first place, And we'll try it if that's what you want, but I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that from an enforcement standpoint, from a collection standpoint, this is going to be challenging.
Yeah, cause the difference as far as the enforcement piece goes, on a duplex or a quadplex, we're going to the property owner. Which if we do the townhouses on a 1 to 2, like we do, let's just say we're gonna treat it as if it's a quadplex. So we go on a 1 to 2, so we end up delivering 8 carts to that location or whatever. I don't know that and I don't know this, so I'm just speculating. Does the townhouse organization have a mailing address that they could be their own policers to say, okay, cart 6565 belongs to A and B or 1 and 2, you know, so you guys have an issue you need to straighten out or whatever, you know, which could be a situation. Just that specific area, there'd be no way that we could deliver 16 garbage cans down there and pick up 16 garbage cans and 5 recycling cans.
But in addition, I agree with you, but in addition, they would have the right to do it, and it's split up 3 ways, so there'd actually be 3 pickup sites, 2 on 21st, 1 on 22nd. So you wouldn't have all 18 at one curb.
Yeah, but even, yeah,
So-
true.
So the other thing is, the one thing I would caution, or cautious of, is that the fact that townhouses, say we were to put up a development of nothing but townhouses. Well, right now, we're saying they all need to be collected,
Yes, and like on the east side, that.
but they're all privately owned. You've traveled enough, you know, you see townhouses, you know, San Francisco, DC.
Yep.
They all have their garbage collection, individual homeowners of a townhouse, and that's kind of where I caution this whole townhouse language, is because if they're individual landowners and individually assessed taxes and they were all facing the street, we wouldn't have an issue with picking up their stuff.
If they were all
That's
facing
kind
the
of
street, I don't think we would have an issue.
Right, and that's, but going back to the townhouse language that we currently have, I mean, that does create an issue if another development comes up.
You know,
And we
it's
have
not,
three
it's not
different
dissimilar from the fact that they don't individually mow that strip of lawn, right? They pay into a homeowners association to cover those costs. They don't individually plow their driveway. I mean, there's economies of the type of facility it is. And typically, you're gonna see garbage and recycling collection the same way. There's gonna be an enclosure for them. They haul it out to the dumpster in the enclosure, and then that single dumpster is collected. I mean, just like an apartment complex.
Yeah, and I would disagree. Well, the only reason I would is because my cousin lived in DC and he owned a townhouse, and he had his shovels and he had his lawnmower, and like you said, it was only a small strip of grass, but he had to be out there, and it was either that or a pair of scissors. So I mean, and they still did garbage recycling and all their pickup for each individual townhouse. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't an association, it was their individual townhouses, which is, you know, you go back to siding your own townhouse, well, you only had to side that front facade and the back facade. I mean, it saved you a ton of money, and then roof was, you know, they would do their own roof to roof repairs, you know what I mean?
Well, who would be responsible for, hypothetically, if they didn't shovel the sidewalk in front of that property? Who do we then, like, what if it's a private home? Like, say, if I had a sidewalk in front of my house and I didn't take care of it, and then the city took care of it, I get it sent out in either my taxes or whatever else at the end of the year as a fee. Who do you target if that was the case for this particular building?
I'd have to check with Ray Starks, but I'm guessing it'd be the association.
The association. So I wouldn't have a problem telling the association that if it is a case where there's a violation, the association is gonna be getting a bill, and you guys need to figure it out. And if it's a case where you don't like the collective people who pay the bill, you know, who pay the portion of it or whatever, if it starts getting to the point where now you start needing to raise fees, well, that's your guys's, that's what you guys want. That's what it is. So just like any private owner, if you own an apartment complex, the property owner gets it, the association will get this, you know. And I don't think that would be unreasonable at all for them, because but one of the things, and I do agree with you, Joe, that you know, in other places that it's a case where there would be a dumpster communal area, but right now it's a situation we're in transition, and we had been providing services at one time, and now we're going to be removing these services that people aren't, their property taxes aren't being reduced. If you rent a place, even like the new stuff that's going up at the corner of Pepper and 16th there is no expectation of services because you're renting, or at least I've never had any expectation.
Well, just to be
of
clear
services.
though, that particular, in accordance with our ordinance, they should never had any recycling services.
Well,
Right? I mean, it was an error that they were getting those services.
and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree that we were potentially in violation of our own ordinance.
Right.
You know.
So-
One of the things, because like, for example, I mean, we could claim efficiency, you know, and there's times where we do, but it'd be much more efficient if people took care of their own road in front of their house with snow removal. The reason why, you know, governments provide certain
It's more
things is
efficient,
because,
right.
yeah, it's either services that the market sector won't provide or can't provide, you know, and reasonably, could you buy fire protection? Sure. How expensive could it be?
Right.
You know, so that's why. So I mean, there is a give and take, you know. I mean, and by no means do I want to be a member on the committee and say, you know, you guys need to do this, figure it out. We don't want to give you any tools. But on the other hand, you know, it kind of is doing business in some sense. You know, there is a cost to doing business. You know, for anything, it'd be nice if we didn't have to spend any money on trucks at all for public works, if they were just free, if Ford or Chevy or whoever just donated them to us. That would be really convenient. That'd be very efficient, you know, but it's kind of the cost of doing business.
So I'm trying to understand now, the desire is then to collect from townhouses on a one-to-one basis if they're owned.
Well, I would almost like to have the language changed, zero lot line versus townhouse, because if we're gonna be utilizing descriptions from a different department, which would be the assessment department, which is, and I could be wrong, but is, in my opinion, is more of an arbitrary language, whereas if we had a strict definition of what a zero lot line
Because
premise
the
is.
zero lot line premise, Colonial Charm does not qualify. Right, a zero lot line is, my house is on my lot, and I may share a wall with somebody, but that's not my lot. And that's not the case with Colonial Charm. That property is cut into strips. And those strips have absolutely nothing to do with the layout of the buildings or
Well,
who's.
why were they cut into strips like that? That was an arbitrary nature in how that was
Yeah, it was
designed.
for tax purposes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it really.
But it's not a zero lot line. You know, if you're gonna look at a definition of a zero lot line,
It'd be
if
like
my house
yeah,
and
it'd
my
be like a
lot are on
duplex.
this.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
duplex
right,
is a
duplex.
lot line.
Yeah,
Half
You
lot,
got
half
and
a
yeah.
house,
right.
a common wall house.
But then if that's the case where we need to find a definition, then I suggest that we find a definition, because we cannot, Wisconsin Rapids cannot be the only place in the whole world that has got a situation like this. We can't. This would be like saying that we've got the last dodo in our zoo. There's no way. First of all, they're extinct. Two, with all the resources and everything else, how can't we figure this out? I mean, it's a case where if it's a rental property, no, someone's making an income on it. But these people, again, and I've repeated this, they're
But
paying more
this
property tax.
this homeowners association does not consist of non-rental properties. There's several of these that are rented.
Well,
I mean, it's
I'm not gonna punish people, this is what I'm saying right now. I'm not punishing these people, the ones that this is their domicile, they're paying property tax, city property tax, that's equivalent or more than anybody else, so figure it out then.
See,
Shane?
I have nothing enlightening to add to this, however, it has to be all or nothing, so if that's, I
Yeah.
don't think you can pull out, so for whatever the definition, we pick it all up there, or 1 to 2 or whatever it is, because next year I might decide to rent out my place and go south, and so now there's another one. So you pick it all up or not. Then so if it's, and I agree, they're tax paying and they're paying a lot of taxes, so pick them up. Whether it's rented or not, because I don't think you can keep track of every year who's rented, who's not. We're gonna pick up this one this year, this one next year.
Well,
It's
so-
a
so-
possible task.
So one of the objectives here is also we're looking at picking up versus picking up with carts. So in order to try to reduce costs and be more efficient at collecting with a can cart type collection system, we're proposing not to collect dumpsters, things like that. In fact, we're proposing to look at even city-owned dumpsters and either contracting that out or doing something different to get out of that business altogether. You know, we'd have to sit down and evaluate it, but it may be more cost effective to say, well, if we wanna pick up from these locations,
Do a dumpster.
then we'll do the dumpster and we'll pay someone else to do it. Than to try to manage the collection and the challenges and administration of,
Probably more cost effective too.
right, of enforcement, in areas like this. Because, like I said, there are a number of complexes that are going up that are similar in layout, right? The buildings aren't adjacent to the street. You know, it makes collection complex, and it's gonna make enforcement extremely complex. You know, what we're trying to do is come up with a cost-effective way to provide this level of service, and save money doing it. But if we, I mean, if the council's committed to, look, if you live in the city, we're gonna pick up your stuff. If you own the place, we may wanna look at contracting dumpster collection for those locations then.
I guess, I don't see an overall issue if we gave them bins and did it on a 2-to-1 basis, you know, and then with their option to buy, you know, additional services, and we own the right of way, so we can put up a sign that says no parking and put a pad, and it's up to them to get it out there. I mean, you know, even any place moving forward. Like you said, more properties are coming up perpendicular to the street, so it causes an issue, but in those places, I say the same thing. We put a pad out, we say, you guys put it out here.
I don't think we wanna start paying for pads.
Well, I mean, we're talking 3 places right now, and if we build another one, maybe that's what we put into a code, that you gotta put a pad for pickup on privately owned townhouses or complexes, but, I mean, we're not talking a ton of pads, and if the pad isn't the right idea, I mean, the idea is the same, is we give them a specific, and then we let them deal with it. We give them a specific spot where we want it. It makes it easier for us to pick up on 21st or 22nd, or on, you know, wherever, you know, Elm Street or wherever the next street is, and we say, this is our collection point, and
Yeah, I agree, 'cause that.
So like on this one, for example, would we make them put the container adjacent to their parcel? Their strip here?
well, I don't think the location of it is necessarily an issue, because it is chipped, so it has a homeowner. And in this case, it's a,
Well, the
Well,
only,
we don't
so,
have chip reader though, I mean,
yes and no. I think you're saying the right thing, but, so it's next week, and it's their garbage pickup. So you have, I think is there 18 out there or 16? Remember how many residents there are?
18, I think,
Okay,
wasn't it?
so you have 6 in each
Yeah.
one, okay? So, like you said, we choose 21st Avenue for 2 of the places, 22nd for the other one. So it's now next week, their pickup. So in the one location, you're gonna have 12 containers, so that's 36 feet. The next location, you're gonna have 36 feet, and then 22nd Avenue, which isn't an issue, cause there's not a lot of street parking over there. So you're gonna have 36 feet, probably, there you have carriage walks that go out to the street there, you know, so.
on our recycling week, then you'd have twice as many.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's what
It's
you're
just
saying, okay.
six, and then, well, you'd have 12, then you need 4 feet for each one, so 50 feet. You know, so that's the part of it where, you know, kind of along to what Alderperson Kubishak said, is that if in this situation you get an agreement with the association that says, you know, we're on a 1 to 2 basis, you know, similar to duplexes or quadplexes, but you have them being responsible, you know, this is a condition of the variance, I guess would be the better way of saying it, that it's a variance to the ordinance, that this is a by definition, this is a townhouse, but we'll provide you the service, and these are what the expectations are, is that you're gonna be delivered carts on a 1 to 2 basis. You document this resident and this resident are this cart, you know, and you police it yourself. And if there is code violations or ordinance violations, then your service is gonna be ended. Would that be a possible solution?
Yeah, that could absolutely be, instead of, fines or fees or whatever, contract is ended, period.
You know, and maybe you do something where it's a third violation, the services is ended, you know, they're gonna police it themselves. I mean, that might be I think the hardest part is, you know, like you had said, the 0 lot line is more along the definition of a townhouse, Lee, that you're, in my opinion, is what you're identifying it, where you have an address or a driveway that's going out to the street. You know, this in my opinion was an apartment complex that was converted to townhouses or condos. You know, hopefully, yes, this is a single solution or a single entity, I think, within the city. You know, I don't know, to me that's a possible solution, and we can possibly try it. It's up to
Well, the challenge with that though is if you had someone violate and the association's paying the fines, or if there isn't a fine, what are those people gonna do with their garbage then, if we're not gonna pick it up?
They would then, the contract in essence that we would have with the organization.
With the whole
with
association?
the whole association is gone.
Right.
Because we have the issue, same thing with the townhouse, or same thing with the condos, or sorry, duplexes or fourplexes. The contract is with the property owner.
Right.
Not with the individual renter.
Tenant, right.
You know, so the landlord gets notified, so it would be the same process, that this cart is in violation, that cart would be tagged. That resident who has that, or whichever, you know, A and B, now have become notified that they violated the oath. The association would then also be notified that A and B tenant, you know, or owner in this case, have violated, you know, the city ordinance. This is their first offense. A month from now, if it happened again, this is their second offense. A month from now, if it happened again, that's their third offense. Trust me, with how these people who own these condos are with this, how important it is to them, they're gonna make sure that they're not in violation because they don't wanna start paying. in my
I agree with
opinion.
that 100%, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
You know,
they don't wanna lose out on
I
it.
mean, my total concern is in opening this up on a 1-to-1 basis is just the space and the logistics of it, truthfully, you know.
So my question is, you know, I know, you know, garbage and recycling, do they follow the same route?
Yes,
Okay.
not to an extent.
And that's what I'm asking is maybe it's a situation in that area, we do recycling on a Tuesday and garbage on Thursday?
I won't do that.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to see
no,
if
I
that
don't wanna-
logistically worked or not worked.
No, because now we're going over to that property just for that specific reason, and we're not getting all the other properties that are in that road.
Well, that's what I mean, I didn't know if there was, if that was like a route line where you could actually incorporate the recycling a part of this route.
Sure.
And I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
that because this way that clears that
Especially,
up. So we're not-
especially when we, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but especially when we roll this out in the first quarter of 2019, it's gonna be even worse than it is right now. You know, right now, we're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays on the west side. And my intent, we don't have this completed yet, but Monday, you know, it may be one week where we do the entire west side, or one day of the week where we do the entire west side. So then you'd be both vehicles over on the east side, you know, the remainder of the day or whatever, so it'd be even more of an inconvenience then.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't know, you know, if that's an option you guys even looked at. I mean, and you know, because we're talking about quadplexes and everything. If let's say a quadplex and you had 3 of them in a row, which I do in my area, what we have issues with, we're still going to need the space for a quadplex, and if each quadplex bought 4 carts, you're going to have 8 carts in front of each one, and you got them lined up all the way down the street. Is that an option? I mean, for you guys, when you guys are looking at the routes and stuff, is it an option that you do recycling on Mondays on the west side, and then you finish up on the east side, and then you do garbage on Tuesdays on the west side, or
My concern would be is that it's such a struggle when it's on the same day to get people to get it out the right week.
Right.
What is it gonna be, I mean, not to belittle it, but is it
no,
gonna
I mean,
be
there's always a
more-
learning curve, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if that would actually
What-
gain efficiency for you guys.
Can we put down something as what Paul was saying there?
So, contract of 1 to 2, that it would be considered a no cost, but on a contract basis, so there'd be an agreement. Third violation service, the contract would be null and void for how long?
Like forever.
Yeah, once
I
we
think
pull the
that's-
cards.
Well, I mean, you might have a new property owner, I mean, do you do it a year? I mean, chances are, once they do an enclosure and do a dumpster, they're probably not gonna come back to it.
No.
So it's kind of a one-time deal. If service is ended, then the contract would not be renewed. Okay. I do have a situation with a sanitary sewer service that the property owner wants to meet me at 8 o'clock. There's 2 other items on here, and I'll come back afterwards if you want to continue the discussion with Paul here on those 2 items. We've got mobile home parks.
Yep,
Whether they're gonna be served or not,
yep.
as a for-profit business with multiple renters. And then, leaf collection, whether we're gonna provide that service or not.
Yeah.
If we do provide it, I think it says here, we've got consensus that we go to a craft bag if we provide the service. The question is,
Yep.
are we gonna continue to provide that service?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Are you
I'll be back.
in the building or?
No, I've gotta
Going
go on site. Yep,
Okay,
so.
yep, go ahead. We'll do what we can.
Okay.
Do we have any further discussions on landfill and any information there?
As far as,
I think we're talking to the,
All the things to wrap up, just walk it over that.
Yep, yep.
cause wasn't there a discussion, or wasn't last month that we discussed, like,
reduced rate for.
Yeah, have city-
rapids.
yeah.
I failed to look that up, I'm sorry.
it's
'Cause I
okay,
didn't think
cause I
that
have to go
was-
to the landfill and take a load in, and I asked lots of questions to the people there. There is no separation between any residents of Grand Rapids, Wisconsin Rapids, it's all the same. So if we do have a contract, we might wanna look at
I'll look at that. 'cause I
clarifying that up,
thought I
because there
read
is
that.
none. There was also discussion about, taking goods there at some point, and concern of going up the hill or not up the hill. And I asked them also that, they said anytime, right now they open a new cell, so they're keeping everybody off the hill as much as possible, and they're using the dumpsters down by, the weigh station. However, once that gets calmed down, any 4-wheel drive truck, they are always sent to the hill. If grandma shows up in her Buick, they would have her go to the dumpster. And they have multiple dumpsters there to unload. And I had my truck, but the new cell being open, so I was able to unload in the dumpster there. But those are the couple things I found out.
But the key was, and that's the one thing that we had thought, that there was a negotiated rate in the tipping fee contract.
Yeah.
I'll
And so that's
verify
something
that
that,
tomorrow.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
that's one question I had asked, if I had gotten a preferred rate being a city resident, and that everyone's treated equally.
Same.
As far as, what's the next order? Which one do you wanna,
Trailer park?
trailer park or the leaf collection?
Which one would be easier to knock out? I said leaf.
Leaf.
I-
Leaf would be mine, I think.
I don't care, but as far as I'm concerned, Paul, and like I said, I don't wanna be a dictation with this, but I don't care how it's done. I wanna offer leaf pickup if that's the consensus with the committee. However efficient, inefficient, however you gotta do it.
Would we continue to do it 2 times a year like we currently do, or would we just do it in the fall?
I think if we, as long as we had an advocacy with it, letting people know when it is, I think confusion is what really bothers people. If they knew 100% that it was only in the fall type of thing, and they had to make arrangements and contact their friend or buddy or brother-in-law or whatever with the pickup truck to take care of it in the spring, I think that that would be great. But when there's an expectation that they bag everything up, set it at the curb, nothing happens for 3 weeks, they call, and then they find out that the service isn't available in the springtime, then that's when there's a problem. I think that people are reasonable, understanding, but it's that lack of communication that really bothers.
So what is the, so that's forefront right now, right? Because we are advertising for the fall pickup. It's a struggle because we no longer have a true local paper besides the Times, City Times. Where do you advertise that so that everybody gets that information?
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I kind of struggle with too. You know,
And I'm asking as a question, I'm not trying to.
No, by no means, yeah. I agree with you. On the other hand, sometimes, you know, we were talking about alternate side parking earlier, how for some people, it's kind of hard to figure out one or the other. Your taxes are hard to figure out too, but doing a little bit of research, you can do them on your own, or you can pay somebody else to do it, you know. So I mean, sometimes there is an onus that, myself for example, I don't know when the compost sites are open, but I go on my phone or I go on my computer and I go online because there is a website, you know. And sometimes, you know, with the statement that I just made about the advocacy reaching out to people, I think that there is an expectation that individuals, residents, take a little bit of time to do that. We do have information on our website. Fortunately, we've got a better website now, but I think that so many people have been accustomed to the previous website where it's just so user unfriendly. And that's kind of a hard thing. You know, there are, obviously we're not going to fix everything. Maybe, you know, getting a Nixtel program where we send out push alerts to people that sign up with their cell phone to the organization. I don't know. There's a lot of innovation out there. There's a lot of smart people creating a lot of cool things with technology. But I guess to give you direction, Paul, I don't, short of something sending it out with the tax letters, you know, I don't know how many things that, and we don't want to be sending a book to people, but, you know, that kind of a thing. And I guess just, yeah, but the website is a big thing, putting it on there, because then we can direct someone to that.
So like I said, we just currently did this for this fall. So it's supposed to be on the Public Works website. There typically is a phone message, and then we posted it, I believe, in the City Times.
River City's Access, where it scrolls through.
Yep. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that gets sent to Tom, and he puts it on the Wisconsin Rapids Facebook page. I guess I shouldn't speak because I'm not exactly where he puts it, but he puts it. I believe he puts it on there, on the city's calendar, and
Is it
stuff
on
like that.
Public Access, where it rotates through.
I have not seen it, but it would not surprise me.
That would have
Okay, I've
just
never
been
seen
sent
that.
over to him on Monday, so it might not be on there yet. You know, so.
No,
Yeah,
letters are hard
actually,
too, because you get
Tom's
too
still
many
here.
letters throughout the years, and all of a sudden you throw them away, and
Tom, or is it
you know,
Travis?
Oh, I'm
they
sorry, I thought
become
maybe Tom was here.
almost a nuisance.
Mm.
And just the sheer cost of constantly sending letters too.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that really benefited is going on the website, and I think that this is previous with the other website, is the calendar. That's how I know when to put out my recycling, is that it's shaded blue or shaded whatever, and then it's got the brush pickup dates. And I printed that off and I got that on my refrigerator, you know, and I guess it's just sometimes taking the onus of that. Potentially sending something like that out in the tax bill, I don't know,
Yeah.
you know.
So I just put down that we're gonna provide a fall pickup and not a spring, and we're gonna use go with the craft bags.
Yep.
Is everybody
If
okay
that's
with
what
that?
the route we wanna go to continue the service, that's what it will be.
Yeah, I don't have a problem requiring a craft bag to do it.
Can I take craft bags there now?
Yep.
Is there a limit that we have that somebody can put out, or, I mean, would there be?
We don't currently have that.
Okay.
I like that idea of
Okay.
craft bags.
Are you guys gonna be getting rid of the rear loading vehicles, right?
That's what the intent is, just
Right.
because they
Do they
may
have
not-
any value to them?
No, but they may not be operational when we get rid of them.
Okay. Just trying to think of a way that makes it easier for them to, I mean, the craft bags are one thing, but once again, how do you?
How you picking 'em up?
How you picking them up, especially when you go to a one-man vehicle?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering
Yeah,
about.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, we honestly haven't had this discussion, but one of the quick, just initial thoughts is multi-axle trucks with a loader, tossing the bags in the loader, going until the loader bucket gets full, dump it in the back of the truck. You know, truck gets full, it takes off, the loader keeps going. Or we could have it on a call-in basis rather than driving through neighborhoods, so that we put together a schedule. This date is when we're gonna go. These are the 15 parcels that called in because they put craft bags out.
That might be the way to go, cost effective wise. Instead of
Then we're
driving
not
every
driving
street.
around through the neighborhoods.
Well,
And
then-
if you don't call in, you don't get picked up.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if this is, it needs to be explicit in the policy itself, but, this is where, you know, the essence of the dichotomy of the policymakers of the committee and, you guys being the administrative aspect of it, we make the suggestion, hey, we don't wanna lose this service, and do
I'll
what you
figure it
do.
out.
Yeah. You do a wonderful job at sometimes figuring it out from scratch. You know, if you think you got a great idea of doing it, or we gotta manipulate it, and try something else, do it. Sure. Do what you gotta do. So I don't.
Good enough, Ryan, or?
I mean, yeah, if it turns into a need that we have to reduce it to a call-in, if it works just driving through neighborhoods, you know, whatever it takes. And then obviously relaying that to us, so that
Yep.
when we, talk with residents or see bags out, if we're driving through the neighborhood and whatever else, and we just notice things, then, you know, we can compare notes that way, so. What do you think on that one, Mr. Chairperson?
Fine.
So we got that one wrapped up?
Yep,
We can cross
I would
that.
say, unless
Okay.
I'm missing something. No,
So
I-
what I got written down is just provide a fall pickup, craft bags. Doesn't necessarily have to be a call-in basis, but we'll report back to you what we come up with as a solution for that.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Okay?
We should probably notify people where they can get crap bags.
Did you have something?
I just
Yes.
wanted to be clear, just a fall pickup, not spring and fall.
Just a fall.
Just fall.
And really truthfully, I don't think that is an ordinance issue. It's more or less, we're going to be sending out notifications to property owners, you know, that we're switching to an automated refuse pickup. And, well, so we're gonna be doing multiple letters. We're gonna send out a letter similar to the recycling carts, where it's, you are given a 96-gallon cart. If you don't respond, you're gonna be given a 96-gallon cart. If you want a 48-gallon cart, you need to respond, fill out this, you know, same thing with duplexes. A duplex, you're gonna be on a 1 to 2 basis. If you want additional cart, you're gonna pay for the provided service. Quadplexes, 1 to 2, I believe is what we picked, right, on quadplexes. If you want additional carts, whatever. You know, then once everything is picked, the dates are, you know, the end of the month, we'll order the trucks. Once it gets approved by council, we'll try to set the date based on the delivery of the truck, plus or minus, or probably plus 30 days, so that we have the trucks prior to getting to it, you know, and saying, you know, I don't know if we'll make the tax bill or not, but probably after the first of the year, a letter will be sent out saying we are switching to automated carts. You were notified as a property owner, you know, whatever, how to, you know, once again, how to place the cart properly. Probably send out the recycling calendar, because the routes and everything like that are gonna be changing. Informing them of that, and then when the projected start date is gonna be, when they can expect the carts to be delivered, you know, so there'll be multiple communications, so we can really hammer on this, saying change in services, you know, you will no longer have a spring cleanup. It's going to be strictly a fall cleanup. You'll be required to use, I think they're 25 gallon, maybe they're 35 gallon craft bags, but there's a standard size, you know, they sell them at Ace, Home Depot. And if somebody else chooses to get into the game and selling craft bags, we can also identify those people. And this is when it's gonna be, you know, I mean, it's really hard. I just had a conversation this week with a person. It's hard to set a date because, right, you wanna be efficient on it. And so, you know, based on a month ago, whatever, you know, so we do have a date set for the second to last week of October, and then the first week of November is how we typically do it. We pick up, take a week off, do brush pickup, and then pick up again, so hopefully it works.
And I think that that's one thing that I've never experienced, even not being on the council, is that it isn't so much the aspect of when it happens. It's that if somehow the service or services or any services were to disappear, then that's when there's a problem.
Yep.
I think the people are reasonable too with weather and you know, scheduling, and in the past position that I've had, scheduling, leaf, vacuuming and different things, it's a shot in the dark. Weather changes, so Mother Nature doesn't help us out ever. So,
Okay, is that all right then with everybody?
absolutely.
Good. Let's attack, or try to anyway, has the mobile home parks to be served or not discussed, and no consensus on whether mobile home parks will be served or should be considered a commercial entity, a for-profit business with multiple renters.
So I think last month the comment was made is that we've kind of already started to go down this road with the recycling containers, but I didn't make a good enough note to feel confident in putting that the committee wanted to continue to provide that service, because I think there was maybe some people that were like, well, you know, they're getting higher level service for the amount of property taxes or whatever that they're paying, you know, kind of along the same lines with the townhouses, that some of them are owned, some of them are rentals. And so that's why I didn't mark this down as completed, just because I wasn't confident that all three of you guys were on the same page. So that's the only reason why this one was left out there, so.
Can you refresh our memory, Paul, in terms of the access that we currently have or previously had to most, if not all, of these?
So access as far as getting to the properties is adequate and substantial. I believe last month is when we also talked about it, that we would write a letter to the organization saying, you know, by having us provide this service, you're virtually not holding the city of Wisconsin Rapids responsible for any damage to your road system, because it's their road system within the park. That was the other thing that we were going to do with that. Because currently I think the intent is to make the ordinance read that the parcel is responsible to bring it curbside, rather than us going on to private property. So as far as I'm aware, all of I believe there is 6 parks within the city, and all of them have a substantial road system within the park.
I think the one that we kind of talked about was potentially the one by
Robinson
Park.
Yep.
Yeah, that might have been narrow.
Yep.
But other than that, the volume or the amount of customers there isn't as much as Thousand Oaks or
Correct.
or other ones.
Yeah, I think there's 25 trailers there versus 60, I think, in Thousand Oaks.
Cool.
I
Shane?
don't know, I guess I
Lee.
personally look at, it's like a spread out apartment. I think they should have a community dumpster, and they should take care of their own, and we gave them recycling bins, we can unring that bell. Just cause we got recycling bins, we don't need to go down the garbage path, we can, I think that's a responsibility of the business that has the park. Most of those aren't purchased, I don't believe, right?
No, there's only one, so that was the thing, you know, there was 3 of the parks that were delivered them improperly, not according to ordinance. We started to go down that road, and then Alderperson Kubaschak made a referral, and I think that never really followed through on it.
No, there's a couple of referrals that never really got.
So, was kind of waiting for how everything was gonna fall out there or whatever. So then we just recently, Thousand Oaks on the west side is the only trailer park out of the 6 that purchased additional carts within the last 2 months, which in talking with staff, we would probably simply refund it at a proportion based on providing them service or at full rate or whatever, so.
I just don't think that. That's just my opinion.
I mean, I apologize.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think it's crazy to me that we look at people that actually pay property taxes, and we look at people that don't pay property taxes, and we're willing to provide a service because it's convenient through the park. If we were to provide the mobile home parks, I would think in order to be consistent, we would have to have the same type of language where if there's offenses, multiple offenses, and whatever the offenses, if it's 3 or whatever was appropriate for the townhouses, then the same should hold true to the mobile home parks to stay consistent
Yep.
across the board. I mean,
And
that's not a piece that we talked about, but
Sure, and that is kind of where we looked at the 1-to-5 ratio, was at that piece of it because of the, kind of just using the standard single family, looking at the assessed values or whatever, I believe is how the 1-to-5 ratio came about. And yeah, I totally agree.
I could see not doing it, not providing the service, I guess.
They're not assessed individually, you know, where.
They are.
where
Some of them are.
Oh, are some of them
yeah.
are?
Some
Because
of them
the-
get lottery credit and everything. Some people own their trailer and they rent like a parking fee.
Is that,
you know,
that's,
so.
it was
They
the
pay
whole city
personal,
here?
they pay if I remember correctly, you probably may remember also, they pay personal property taxes on the value and the contents of the trailer. And then they pay virtually an association fee to own, to rent that stall.
Yeah, it's like 100, don't quote me on the number, but it could be like
I know
$150
there's
to
mobile
rent or
home
whatever.
thing.
Um,
Steve has to do it through the assessor's office.
And some of them have their own water and sewer, it isn't a communal water and sewer. I know that Crimson Leaf is looking at potentially, I know that he's doing some interesting things there as far as, I mean, he's spending a lot of money into it. But yeah, some of these, they own the trailer. You know, some places, and it's mixed. It isn't all or nothing in any particular park with being 6 parks, or I thought it was 5, but it could be 6. Maybe missing out on the Robinson Park one. But yeah, I mean, that's where I don't want to get down the road of identifying second-class citizens, you know, and if people are paying a certain proportion tax with that if they own their trailer, or mobile home, I should use the terminology. It is a little bit different than renting a rental property. I was just talking with an individual on an unrelated issue at one of the mobile home areas, and yeah, I think he was living there for 14 years. You know, now that's his home. You know,
So it's muddied up now, because you have some individuals and some not, versus Colonial Charm versus an apartment building. You know,
and I think
it does get muddy.
The one thing that I guess I would throw out is, again, providing services, and unfortunately, sometimes we look at costs and benefits in terms of the business aspect of just strict purview, but in terms of providing a community service, how much more, and Paul, not with the cost of the carts themselves, how much more would it cost us in terms of actual budgetary numbers to continue the status quo? Again, aside from the carts themselves, but just the amount of time involved doing what we would be doing moving forward with the cart situation compared to what we've got right now.
I would think that you're probably right, there is probably only 5, I maybe misspoke or whatever, but I would say that you probably spend, an hour's time in each one of those parks, picking up those parcels. You know, some of them maybe plus or minus 15 minutes either way, but I would say the average throughout all of them is probably about an hour's time. You know, that's not fair. The one on Highway 13 by the overpass, there's only, I think, 25 trailers in there or whatever, but, so it's probably, person's time and rental rates, you're probably talking, $150 per park, you know, plus the tipping fees of, at $45 a ton. I mean, I can't compute that off the top of my head.
Sure,
It's
whatever
somewhere,
that
you know,
is.
but I mean, but for labor and rental equipment, probably $150.
And then that really wouldn't increase drastically from what we're currently doing to what we're proposing to do.
No, I would think that it would be the same for I mean, yeah, so currently, we're probably spending close to $200 at a park, you know, because you have 2 persons labor and the same virtually rental truck, you know. Now you're gonna go down to 1 person and virtually the same rental rate on the truck, you know, so.
And we're gonna get more efficient with the whole pickup anyway, but we're gonna see efficiencies,
Mhm.
even if we continued the status quo with, picking up every person that way,
Mhm.
so. Yeah, I mean, again, it kinda comes back, as far as the committee member, comes back to the essence of, unless we reduce taxes or give credits or whatever, I'm not in favor of cutting services of any kind. Now, we could build in that contract aspect, that because we want to realize efficiencies, and if this does cause inefficiencies moving forward with this card situation and having violations, then those privileges can be removed, you know, and in this situation, they would be removed for perpetuity. You know, it wouldn't be a grace period, it would be, you know, you're getting grandfathered in type of a thing. This is, we're continuing to provide a service, but it isn't exclusive, you know. I don't know if that makes sense at all to the committee.
Shane, did you have something?
Yeah, I disagree a little bit though, because you're not applying it consistently. A mobile home park still is a business. And you're providing a business, a garbage collection business, the service to a business, where every other small business up and down May Street could argue that they could get by with a single can, but we're not stopping and picking up all those businesses either though.
Well, how
And they're
many-
still tax paying, they pay double, they pay property tax and they pay personal property tax on their business. They're double taxed.
And thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Blake. So then that goes to the question, how many, because what I'm just suggesting is continuing the status quo, what we're picking up right now. How many properties are we now excluding with this proposed program, Paul?
I think there is probably 25 or I don't think it'd be more than 30. I'm sorry, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I'm gonna guesstimate at 30 park properties that we currently pick up garbage at, that we won't be picking up garbage in the future. And the only reason why that is the case is because they're commercial properties that have dumpsters at them.
But small businesses are able to leave. their
So
one-
I don't have that in
one
Joe's
can
notes
though,
here, but
right?
I believe that was something that was addressed, yes, that if a commercial property can get the material curbside and can operate within a 96-gallon cart, that we would, sorry, I don't see it on here, which I thought we
Because
talked
currently
about
you
it,
would
but
pick up a small business, wasn't it?
They're limited to 3 32-gallon cans.
Yep.
Or a, for some reason, 3 32-gallon cans equated to a 2-yard dumpster.
Makes sense.
To me, it's a
No.
little-
Yeah, there's not.
No, but go back to what your point was, is that, I guess at the end of the day, we're also providing for quadplexes,
Right. Which is a business.
which is a business.
Mhm.
So, go back to your point, is that's the hard part, is we,
Not- It's not consistent.
we all, yeah, well, that's what I mean, is we ultimately, if you look at it from one aspect, it's okay to do, but you're realizing that half of my district is quadplexes, and, so that didn't seem to be an issue to discuss the quadplex idea, but now all of a sudden, and not to reiterate the other issue, but, now all of a sudden we look at a little bit more dwelling, but they're actually individually owned, and now we're willing to exclude them, but then we're gonna go back to the parks. We're gonna say, well, there might be 2 property owners or 5 property owners in there in a mobile home park of 80 or whatever, I don't know the numbers, so I apologize. But the point is that it just seems like we're back and forth on the issue depending on what you label it.
Yeah, and I think if you guys recall, and I may be stating this wrong, but the assessor said that traditionally businesses or business properties were considered 3 units or less. And the reason why 4 plexes or 4 units is what the ordinance currently reads, and it was just a matter of, to stay consistent with the current ordinance, was why it wasn't gonna address it, go to triplexes, I believe, if I remember correctly.
It
Yeah,
was something
I
like
think
that.
so.
But-
That sounds,
Yeah, but I agree with Lee though, that it's really muddied up,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
And most of it
Some
is.
businesses are, some aren't, some
And
aren't.
most of it is just because of possibly inconsistency in following the current ordinance with the practices that we have.
We're doing.
So yeah, and back to Ted's point though, is, you don't wanna exclude somebody paying property tax because they are, in essence, putting in for that service.
And I guess kind of in essence of looking at cost savings, I think that we could by excluding everybody in town, regardless of what it is, we could save a lot of money if we require everybody to get their own services from Advance or whatever.
Well, I don't know if we need to go that far, because
No,
then we're gonna be cutting staff, and we're already short-staffed.
Well, no. But I mean, it's an element where if we really are that fiscally responsible, that we really need to look at this. There's a lot of stuff that we voted to approve money on and approve change orders and overages and everything else on particular projects and stuff that, maybe do we want this, but do we need it? I think keeping the status quo, if it doesn't cost us above and beyond, as a percentage, is, I don't know, in terms of actually, the actual handling of it, the actual driving the truck and picking up the stuff, but as far as a policy procedure, I think that it's, we're not taking anything away from anybody, and then if someone says, well, how come they're continuing to get that, it's the status quo, and we're looking at measures of potentially removing that as we go forward. I mean, it's,
But here's an opportunity to fix the status quo if the status quo is broken.
but is
I don't
it
know.
broken,
I don't-
broken, I mean, that's.
I guess to me, it's broken if you're lacking consistency in the application.
Mhm.
That's my only concern is, that maybe that lack of consistency had developed over time.
If we're consistent, it'd make it easier for all of us, as far as us to make a decision.
Right,
Yeah.
and then maybe
But
that,
if
maybe.
if we had a rule was this, and that's what was applied, to everybody.
And you would hope that's the way it was, but it got muddied somehow down the line.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to deal with this case versus that case, or what's this classified as, or what this is classified as, as long as the truck can get to it to service something in this case.
I just wanna see see at least it applied consistently and fairly across the board.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But how? I don't know, how do you get to that point though? I don't know. So trailer parks.
Does that help you?
So do we stay consistent with the recycling ordinance and provide carts on a 1 to 5 basis and allow, once again, we don't have an individual contract with the individual trailer, but it's with the park themselves. And so if a park has 40, units in it, we would provide, 8 carts then? And then the additional 32, the park would have to pick up, then it would be spread out evenly throughout all of the, or if they wanna do a 1 to 2 or whatever,
Yeah, whatever they want, yeah.
whatever they want, and they simply, like I say, with, consistency with the recycling, that they would pay for the carts and not necessarily pay for the service. And then we would also go similar to what we did with Colonial Charm, where you're given, as an organization, you're given X amount of violations, and once you've exceeded those violations on an annual basis, then you no longer are provided the service from that point forward, that you would need to contract that service. Or both services. I think you need to tie both services,
Both
both
together.
recycling and garbage together.
Well, I think that this is a step in the right direction as far as, like you mentioned, Mr. Blazer, where do we start? Obviously we've got inconsistencies, but this could be a mechanism that could take us to getting consistent if there are failures that the organization doesn't correct. Because again, we're not necessarily in the business of picking up everything cost completely free to the point where it costs so much. On the other hand, we don't want to punish someone if it doesn't cost us more than what the original status quo was of doing it. If there's an efficiency that can be created by the organization, let's not punish them either. Is that a good start, Mr. Chairperson?
Excellent.
So then just to repeat,
Mhm.
trailer parks, or mobile home parks, I'm sorry, will be delivered on a 1 to 5 basis, consistent with recycling. If additional cans are requested, it'll be at the rate that we specify to purchase the additional cans, and it would be no additional cost for the fee, or for the service. It'll be just the purchase of the cans. And then we'll have to come up with, do we say three violations per, that might be a little strict.
I was gonna say,
When
especially
you got 80,
or
you got 80 trailers.
a lot of trailers that only have 3 violations.
I mean, we can still, we're working in the right direction. I mean,
And it
Well,
could be-
you may, say out of those 80 that there are 2 that are habitual offenders. The park person knows that, and then either
they're gonna get rid of them.
they get rid of them or,
They police their own.
Yeah.
right,
They're gonna have to go around the night
They're
before
gonna-
and make sure that it's in.
they're gonna have to take care of it, or else they suffer the consequences. 3 might be too, with
Right.
80 might be too small anyway, but I mean, some of the onus has to be on their back, and then to crack down on the offenders.
So I guess, is it safe to say that we'll come up with a ratio on non-compliance for that? and bring it
Correct.
back for
Yep,
approval?
yep.
whether it's based on a pro rata.
See you, Shane.
If it's pro rata with the amount of people as a percentage, or the amount of homes as a percentage within the park, or even 3 after a are we gonna have kinda like a probationary period regardless? You
I would
know,
think
like-
you'd almost have to, I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to.
I mean, citywide,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, I hope we don't have to do very long, because it's not any different than what the recycling is.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
and we've been working 2 years on the recycling, but it's still different, it's still
So like a quarter,
probably
90
3
days or
months, yeah, whatever, 90 days. And the
Or even
other
2
thing
months,
is-
I'd be fine with 60 days.
Yeah,
you
and the
know?
other thing is going back to what you're saying, is it 1 to 2, 1 to 3, then make it consistent across the board for townhouses, mobile homes, mobile home parks. So it's 1 to every 3 residents violations wise?
Sure.
Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, cause if you have 3 in Thousand Oaks versus 3 in Crimson Leaf, it's not proportional.
Right, that's right, yeah. So it'd be the same as the townhouse piece too.
That's what I
is
mean,
If
is-
we, yeah, we'll get something and we'll bring it back to you, and
Okay. Yep.
we won't be that tight on it, stringent on it.
Perfect.
That takes care of what we got on our list here.
Yes, sirs.
Yep.
And if that's the case, we can go to review the referral list. Item 24. 22, that's changed. 24 was removing the sidewalk there.
I think we can take 24 off, right?
Right, right.
I would, just in case, because we threw that out there for potentially the listening audience, as far as alternate site parking, leave it on there 1 more month, and then if nothing really comes about, then we can let it drop.
We can do it that way.
Or we could just leave it there till the end of the year too. I don't,
Take 24 off this time.
Take 24 off,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be.
That's the one,
removed.
isn't it? The sidewalk one, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
That
that's
one
the-
can go off, yeah.
It's the on-street parking that we wanna leave, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was making a note by the wrong one.
The referral list, and maybe you could help me out with this, but I mean, is it, the top 6 that are on here, is there any, I mean, this was all put on to this committee prior to me being here, so I'm not exactly sure the background on some of this. I see you have a couple on there. Is there anything that we can pick off here and put on next month's agenda to try to get some of these others? I mean,
The first couple anyway, have been left, I guess, to keep them, so we don't forget them, or however you wanna say it, so it
Yeah,
stays
so like
in the
the few-
forefront.
Yeah, it's like the future of A Street,
Yeah.
that's just a matter of waiting for the DOT to enumerate a project
Yeah.
to replace that.
okay.
The ward cleanup at some time, I guess, to move it along, probably should be talked about at some point in time, and,
That was a spring thing?
yeah.
So that would be
So-
perfect if we did something along that lines, opposite of, I'm assuming it's a leaf collection type thing?
So what that was when Alderperson Rural was on the committee, they
Mhm.
did Ward 1 cleanup. And that was very successful, but it was also had some failures to it because we had non-Wisconsin Rapids residents and non-Ward 1 stuff was being brought over to Ward 1. But I think what the referral was to actually do that citywide.
Okay.
I don't know that because I wasn't here for that process, but that's what my assumption was that it was to go citywide. Because I believe Alderperson Verkey
With that,
was-
why don't we check with Alderperson Kellogg, whose referral that is, and see if because we should do something with it. I mean, so
Right.
how we want to address it. See how he wants to address it. We have the referral here, and it's his, so he'd be able to, come here and present his case. But it is something I think the wards, in Chad's case there, it did work out well, but people abused the systems, which I don't think was anticipated to be at the point that it was done.
I actually, I guess I would like to make the referral is to look into our new computer system to see if we can implement that for residents, the ID tags. Or some sort of identification tags, whether it be for the compost sites. Does our new IT system, would that handle it? Because if we can do that, we could successfully do a ward cleanup, that you have to present a tag, and you, to prove that you're a resident, but they also, and I go back to the same thing with the dump. I mean, if this same ID tag could take you to the dump, and as a resident of the city of Wisconsin Rapids, you could take your extra garbage or leaves or whatever at a discounted rate to the, waste disposal. It could be implemented in a couple different spots, ward cleanup, compost sites, waste.
Can't use dump, you can't use the word dump
Wa-
anymore. Modified
waste-
landfill.
waste
Yeah.
disposal.
Yeah.
That's right.
I apologize. But I mean, I would really like to take a look at that, because I think that would shore up some of our issues at the compost sites, or, you know, like I just said.
Okay, and I think with the other, like 4 and, it's Angle Park, oh, I know what that's with Scott too, I think over there, number 6, so,
In number 4, what part of 16th Street, cause 16th Street's a pretty long.
right,
street.
that we'd, I think what I was, I guess gonna get at is there, that was part of it. That's actually what we're talking about, and, but other than what's written here, that's all I know about it.
I mean, yeah, 16th Street runs all the way from the north side of town, basically past Washington on the north side, all the way down to Griffith.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
I was gonna just search that resident to see.
I was gonna say what,
Wait,
His
the address.
Yeah.
The
John
address,
City View?
I don't know if we have access to it. Try it, see, if you can bring it up, that'd be wonderful.
You know what I noticed is that Property and Finance Committee doesn't have a referral list. I
We
think
were
it's-
kinda talking about that.
I think it's great that this is the only committee that I know of. I mean, I don't see HR's referral list, I don't see Property and Finance
You don't see
referral
it.
list. I think it's great, I mean,
Mhm.
at least gives me a little leverage to yell at you about, you know, Tom, when we're not getting my referrals on, I can yell at you about.
Oh, yeah.
I can say it's right here,
There's
it's
reason for
22.
things at times.
I don't know, Alderperson Graff, if you were at that, I'm fine, I'm just talking about, if you were at, finance when Tim spoke of that, but he said it's because most of the time, when a referral comes in, they normally take care of that, that item right away at the next, or he feels that it gets taken care of right away. So that's why there isn't a referral for finance.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, you know, it's easy for city staff to take care of some of these things, but in other times it does need to get vetted out by the city council, and that's where I think some anxieties lay.
No, I'm saying that,
They try to put it on their
Tim
list,
seems
right?
like he takes care of it every month right away, is my
So
understanding of it.
they don't have a running
Yeah, I
list.
just did.
I did.
I think you're saying they don't necessarily have a running list.
Right.
What they get, they
Yeah, but
take
just
care
for-
of each
Just
month.
for transparency,
Yeah.
you know, and as aldermen, when we bring up referrals to a committee and it doesn't get on the agenda, I mean, we can obviously say, well, it's on the referral list, you know, it's up to the chair to bring it up, and
Yeah, so this doesn't make any sense, this person that made the referral, actually doesn't live on 16th Street.
Anywhere adjacent.
No, he lives over on Clovine. Oh, so yes, that's my bad. So
Well,
that would
I was
that'd
saying- I was
be,
wondering if
that'd be
it's-
Whitrock, I'm sorry.
Yep, that's why,
Sorry.
I was wondering where he
Yeah,
lived,
Whitrock,
because this may
16th
have,
and Whitrock.
this
Okay.
may have to do with more out there.
back all once the slide.
16th and Whitrock.
Rosewood subdivision.
Yeah, so Whitrock doesn't go all the way through, it's a T
Yes, it does.
intersection, is it?
No, it goes through.
Is it? Okay.
16th, or Whitrock goes all the way from Sampson to 20, or actually to the Ridges Maintenance Shop.
Ridges, yeah, okay. So then maybe what he might be suggesting is a stop sign there or something.
I
Because
think it's
there-
to look at, out, and you get out there, there's no sidewalks at all, I mean.
no sidewalks and no stop sign from
Right.
16th all the way to, is it 2 mile?
2 mile,
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking from 2 Mile to Griffith.
Mhm.
Well, those we'll take a look at, I guess, and, so we can do something, or try to do something.
Yeah,
with
whatever
that.
you feel is
Because-
appropriate when you
No,
get some
yeah, right,
background information,
they
I
won't
guess.
be all at one time, at least until we get this refuse and that all taken care of, but we'll try and get a handle on that. Like I said, Scott has the, well, the ward one, his name's with it, but I think he was involved with the number 6 there too. I know he was.
Okay.
I shouldn't say I think, I know he was.
And he was the one that petitioned
Yeah,
it,
yeah. So, and then the others, we'll see what we can come up with and move them along. Okay, with that then, if that's all, referral, discussion, then I'll move that we adjourn.
So moved. Yeah, or second.
Motion second to adjourn, all in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, we're adjourned at 8:38.